I haven't said this about a new Muse album in probably over a decade, but this is the first time since the album The Resistance that I finished a Muse record and immediately wanted to start listening to it again. I mean, wow. Hey everybody, welcome back to the workshop. Today we are talking about the Wow Signal, Muse's latest album, and I will be doing kind of an unboxing at the same time so that you can experience the artwork while listening to the review. Now, I've been a fan of Muse since their album Absolution, and they've been one of my favorite bands throughout the years. I've seen them several times in concert. That being said, if I'm being completely honest, I haven't loved every direction that they've taken. Drones never quite landed for me, and Will of the People, for example, had some really fun tracks on it, but it's not an album that I ever find myself going back to. The Wow Signal, however, does feel different. It does feel to me like an album where Muse really doubled back down on those elements that original fans really loved, well, about Muse. Within seconds of the opening track, you're greeted by a familiar melody, right? It's the theme from Lawrence of Arabia. Immediately, this signals you that this is going to be a cinematic experience. But if you've listened to Muse long enough, something else clicks with this, which is that they've referenced this theme before on the song United States of Eurasia from the album The Resistance. Now, I can only imagine that this was intentional, right? And for me, it creates this wonderful full circle moment. It immediately transported me back to what many fans, including myself, consider to be one of the band's creative peaks. Now, if The Resistance is one of your favorite Muse albums, shout out in the comments, please. And I'm glad to say you're probably going to be very happy with this new album. One thing I really appreciate is that the Wow Signal understands dynamics. Muse really understands how to be dynamic. Not every song has to hit at 11, right? Muse has always been capable of writing huge, bombastic rock anthems, but here they're confident enough to let songs breathe. Those quieter moments aren't filler, they're moments where you actually get to absorb everything that just happened before the next explosion arrives. And that pacing makes the heavier moments hit even harder. And can we just acknowledge something, okay? Because it's honestly hard to believe that this much sound comes from only 3 artists. Chris on the bass remains absolutely massive. Dominic continues to be one of rock's most tasteful drummers. Like, he's never overplaying, he's always exactly where he needs to be. And then there's Matthew Bellamy. At this point, I don't even think it's controversial or a hot take anymore. He's earned a place alongside modern guitar greats like Tom Morello, Jack White, Jimmy Page, and Johnny Greenwood. And that's before you remember that he also sings the way he does and casually jumps over to the piano whenever the song calls for it. There aren't many musicians with that complete of a skill set. Now, this album wears its influences proudly, I would say. You can hear those flashes of Queen-sized theatrics or progressive rock a la Pink Floyd. There's film scores in here, even hints of classic arena rock woven throughout. But rather than feel derivative to all of those influences, it really feels like Muse embraces everything that's made them unique over the last 2 or so decades. Now, it isn't a perfect album. For an album that is aiming for something cinematic, I wish there were stronger threads connecting all of the songs together. There's 1 or 2 tracks on here that are excellent on their own, but they don't feel quite as connected to the larger experience of the album. And I might say I'd take an extra 5 or 10 minutes to the full album as well. It clocks in at just about 45 minutes, and you know, that's a little bit on the shorter side. And seriously though, side note, what's the deal with modern albums now coming out and being 40 minutes or less? I'm not really into this trend. So for me, one more song, or maybe a longer instrumental bridge or outro, would have been a really nice touch to kind of propel the experience a little bit farther. And there's another minus to this, but admittedly, I'm partially at fault here for giving into the temptation. But by release date, they had already put out 5 of the 10 songs as singles. And so there wasn't as much opportunity for me to really experience it as one whole when I'd already had, you know, half of the album as a trailer. I understand why bands do this, and, you know, the streaming algorithm demands it, rewards it. But I do miss sitting down with an album and discovering it almost in its entirety for the very first time. Unfortunately, with this album, some of us didn't get that chance. I have to say though, I actually really did enjoy Ellie Goulding's appearance on the track Hush. She doesn't steal the spotlight. She kind of elevates the song while still feeling completely at home within Muse's sound. And that in itself, I think, is harder to pull off than it looks. Overall though, for longtime fans, I think this really does genuinely feel like a return to form. It's ambitious without becoming self-indulgent. It's heavy when it needs to be. It's beautiful when it slows down. And above all, it reminds me why I fell in love with this band in the first place. If you've been waiting years for another Muse album to capture the essence or the spirit of some of those older albums like The Resistance or even Black Holes and Revelations, then I think you're going to find a lot to love here. For me, I'd probably say it's going to land somewhere between a 7 and an 8 out of 10, with some favorite tracks just out of the gate probably being Shimmering Scars, Cryogen, of course, and The Sickness in You and I. But hey, if you've already listened to the wow signal, you know, let me know in the comments which tracks were your favorite and how do you think it ranks compared to their other albums. And if you're new here, consider subscribing. You know, we love to talk about music, movies, all of the fun things that make collecting so special. As always, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Until then, keep on collecting.